If you're here, it means I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you are here to learn and grow, to find out more about gender identity and how to enhance belonging and safety for trans and non-binary people in our community, in our congregation, in our pews. And I appreciate that because trans lives are at risk in ways that they always have been, but in ways that are intensifying in our current political environment. So thank you for being here. Being a welcoming space for trans and non-binary people is a life-affirming, life-giving, life-saving activity that we all can participate in. I did have this lovely slide presentation on the TV, but the TV and my laptop have decided that they are no longer friends. So if you would like to see the slides, I can email them to you later. I put a link in weekly announcements. But we're just going to talk, and so it's all going to be good. Okay. The things that I am going to be sharing with you all today, I learned in UU and United Church of Christ settings because I'm a facilitator and trainer with Our Whole Lives, which is the Unitarian Universalist Association and United Church of Christ jointly published human sexuality curriculum for all ages. That's why it's called Our Whole Lives, that there are curricula available for the littles, beginning in kindergarten, where we talk about safe touch and bathrooms and things like that, all the way up to human sexuality for older adults. And I will tell you, y'all, that older adult curriculum is the most inclusive, the most radical, the most up-to-date curriculum we have to offer. So we're going to do it later this year. It's going to be great. Our Whole Lives is unique in that it is for all ages, formed around a set of shared values. So it is inclusive and factual, comprehensive in that we talk about safer sex practices and contraception with young folks and with not so young folks. Those values are self-worth, sexual health, responsibility, and justice and inclusivity. We have some homegrown, like UU Surprise, OWL facilitators, and that they are led by Lisa Lawrence, our family ministry person, and the other people who have training as OWL facilitators are Paige Rappley, Mandy Oviatt, Brendan Nelson, and Annie Converse. Before I was here, I was Paige's OWL trainer. So that's how I got, that's part of the path that brought me to you all, goes through Our Whole Lives. So support that, it's all good. So I want to start our time together with just a little time of reflection at your tables. Think about and share, if you are comfortable, a little bit with your table mates about where you learned about sexuality and about gender. Who taught you what it meant to be the gender that you are? So if you are a woman, who taught you what that means? If you are a man, who taught you what it means to be a man? Or did you just absorb it? And how did that go for you? If you are non-binary or trans, do not feel pressure to share anything at all if you don't choose, if you choose. But where your gender path has gone, as much as you choose to, give you maybe 3 minutes to share among your table, and then what you might have to unlearn in order to learn more. So go 3 minutes to discuss at your table. Knowledge on you. Here is the crux of everything we're talking about. Here it is. Sex and gender are two different things. Two different things. If you get that, the rest of it's easy. So, sex or sometimes called sex assigned at birth, is based on mostly the observation of external genitalia by a nurse at the time of birth. That's it. It also has to do with chromosomes, hormone level, and the body's sensitivity to hormones, and development of secondary sex characteristics. So for humans, secondary sex characteristics are things like breast development, vocal tone, the ratio of shoulder width to hip width, those kinds of things. That's secondary sex characteristics. Gender is a person's internal experience of themselves as a gender human. Okay. So those two things are different. Sex and gender are different from one another. They are also different from sexual orientation. So that's a whole third thing, which has to do with how humans are or are not romantically and sexually attracted to other humans. All right, any questions so far? How are we doing? Is everybody? Everybody good? Okay, super. So here's the bottom line. When an expectant family celebrates a gender reveal before the baby is actually born, what they're really saying is, here's the kind of external genitals we're expecting our baby to have based on a sonogram, usually on a sonogram. When a new parent tells you their baby's gender after birth, what they're really saying is, a nurse took a look inside my little baby's diapers and made a judgment call. How many of you have seen a brand new baby moments from the womb? There's a lot of variation in human genitals. I don't have a slide with this graphic, but you can find, if you choose to be brave with your Google image search, you can actually see the range of genital arrangements from penis through micropenis through clitoris, and it's all the same tissue in different shapes and sizes. So if you're brave, you can find that out. There are a lot of intersex conditions that would be like, I don't know. So sometimes there is a nurse making a judgment call. Sometimes then there are doctors making surgical decisions without a human being's consent. That is still happening, friends, for intersex infants. Second bottom line, you don't know a person's gender identity unless they tell you, including people you know and love, including your own children and your neighbor that you've been calling whatever name and using whatever pronouns for these many years. You don't know a person's internal sense of themselves unless they tell you. So it's a very human thing to do, to make an assumption about a person's gender, but we don't know their experience unless they choose to share it. So when we look at someone that we're meeting for the first time and we assume we know their gender, we're basing that not on their genitals, because usually we have clothes on, right? And we're not basing it on their chromosomes because we have not looked at their chromosomes. How many of you have actually looked at your chromosomes? You can, like high school biology teachers used to do this. They don't anymore because all too often they'll be like, whoa, you've got some chromosome stuff going on that we didn't know about. So they don't do that so much anymore. There's a lot of variation in human chromosomes, so we don't know. But when we assume we know a person's gender, we're really basing that on those secondary sex characteristics. Things like the size of a person's feet, if you think you see an Adam's apple, if they have developed breasts, like those kinds of things, which are secondary sex characteristics that vary wildly among human beings. Okay, so now it's time for some vocabulary. Cis and trans. So both of those neutral terms. Cis means when a person's sex assigned at birth and their gender identity are aligned in ways that we've been taught to expect.
What are you saying? What's the first word and how?
Cis. C-I-S.
That's what
C-I-S. Yes, cisgender is from a Latin word meaning the same.
I never heard it.
Okay, yeah. So basically it means not trans. So yeah, if you're not trans, you're cis. So a baby who's assigned female at birth, who then grows into a person who identifies as a woman, that person is cisgender. Trans is when a person's sex assigned at birth and their internal gender identity are not aligned in ways that we've been taught to expect. For a lot of folks, your sense of your gender identity develops very early, like before year 1, and remains unchanged through the lifetime. But not everybody. For other people, gender identity can develop later and can change and be varied through the lifespan. Both experiences, totally normal, totally okay. Neither the words cis nor the word trans are offensive. They're just neutral words that we use to describe people, like other words that we use to describe people. Okay. So a little bit about language. Language changes a lot over time. Anybody have a Gen Z person in your life? Or are a Gen Z person? Yeah, like skibbity riz, right? Language changes a lot over time. That's great. What's skibbity riz?
What's trans? The one you just said.
Trans is when a person's sex assigned at birth and identity don't match.
Right, I got that, but it was the word after that where it changed. Something changed with the trans.
Language. I said language changes. Language changes over time. So that's great because it means that we can choose the words that best describe who we are. And we can choose when we share those words with other people. That's awesome. But it also means that words get sort of like baggage over time, and some words kind of move into what we call yellow flag language. Like, what does yellow mean? Caution. So words that are, who would think they know a word that is a yellow flag caution word?
Woke.
Right. Oh, I didn't think about that, but yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe, but
This movie there.
oh, maybe. But specifically around gender identity, what are some words that might be like yellow flag, like maybe that would be offensive? Yeah.
Like you call someone ma'am or sir and you don't know them, you're sort of assuming gender.
Yes.
Like when I go to Target, not so much anymore, but my teenagers used to always correct me. Mom, you don't know if the cashier's male, female, trans. You just need to say thank you. For y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, nice. There's always a way to be respectful and gender neutral without making assumptions. So some language,
I have a perfect example.
Okay.
The guy that works on CVS, filling prescriptions, and I'm calling him a guy.
Mhm.
I just assumed he was a guy. I unfortunately didn't say anything about it. But after a couple of months, I guess he had a problem, so he wanted to make it very clear that he was not a he. He started wearing elaborate jewelry, all the time. So at this point, I have no clue, one or the other.
The transsexual is on my list as one for sure. That's, for some people, that is an important word, but it's not a word that I use unless I hear somebody else use. And that's really the crux of yellow flag language, that's not my language to use, but it might be somebody else's, and that is great. So others that I hear sometimes that are might be not so good. I actually heard someone say hermaphrodite the other day. That is not okay. That is not, I think that's past yellow flag into red flag territory. Really, the word homosexual, because it used to be a diagnosis of abnormality used by psychiatrists, that, again, it's a word that might be important to somebody. So I don't want to tell a person who uses that word to describe themselves. It's not my job to say, dude, update your language. Like, that's not my job. But it's not a word that I use to push onto other people. And then the last yellow flag word is a transgendered with the ED on the end. It's kind of yellow flag, like I see more often trans or transgender, because it's not something that like, I don't say that I am womaned. I am a woman, so I don't say that a person is transgendered. They're just trans. Okay. Yeah, did you have something?
So,
Denise.
for me, cis was like that until your explanation that you just had. Because I have asked folks in the LGBTQ community what cis means. And I, as a black woman, am leery of words that I don't understand what they mean. And they couldn't tell me what it meant. So I thought, well, this is just some three-letter whatever to call us something negative. So I really appreciate the fact that you could tell me the derivation of that word from it meaning being the same. Because I took offense. Because I don't know everything, of course, so I try to be sensitive to what other people go through in their lives that I don't understand. Because, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Denise, because a lot of the words that we use to describe sexuality and gender are informed and shaped by white supremacy. And so that's why you get then so many other language, like black women who say, I'm not a feminist, I'm a womanist, that kind of thing. Or a black gay man who says, I'm not gay, I'm a man who loves men, MLM. And so it's to separate, try to pull that out of being shaped by whiteness. So that's something else going on. Yeah.
So I am having to study for my real estate exam every 2 years, and I had to go through all the fair housing laws, which of course have been horrendous and disastrous in our lives. But so they're like, these are all the people that you can have now live in your neighborhood, and then there's this little tiny asterisk at the very bottom that says, no drug addicts or transvestites allowed.
Oh,
It's still there.
That's another term
Right, the
That's another
transvestite,
yellow
which is
flag,
like-
yeah.
But it was like so odd, like drug addicts and transvestites are excluded from fair housing laws.
That takes care of Bob Hope and Milton Berle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
look at the old law they're using to get people out of the country. Just because they don't look like them.
Was it Nigel?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that one too. But another one I feel like that's slowly getting into that territory is tomboy, because to an extent you can say, like a little girl who likes to do things that are typically thought as boys' things can be called a tomboy, but to an extent that can eventually become, well, you're not trans, you're just a tomboy, or you were just a tomboy growing up, or it's okay to be a tomboy, it's okay to be, that's what I heard growing up is, it's okay to be a tomboy, it's okay to like boyish things, you're still a woman, it's okay to be a tomboy, told that I'm still a woman, when then I grow up and go, hey, wait a minute, that didn't fit, that, it's like, a few years ago, once I had that realization that I was trans, it's like, wait a minute. I wasn't even allowed breathing room to think. I wasn't even told what trans was. I didn't know it existed. So I sat there going, why am I different? Why do I feel weird? Oh, I must just be a tomboy, but that doesn't feel right because I know what that means and I know there's something deeper, but not being told. So it's like sometimes the word tomboy is green, sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it can be more red, so that thus then makes it yellow, or technically if you mix red and green it makes brown, but
Good point. Yeah, I think the thing about tomboy that strikes me is that there's a right way to be a girl.
Yeah.
And if you're not a girl, if you're a tomboy, that must be you're doing it wrong. And that feels really bad.
You're wrong on either side.
Yeah.
Right, the box is really narrow. So are there gender words that you have questions about, or anything you want to offer as these kinds of words feel real positive to me and these don't? Like my youngest kid and I, that I usually use kind of gender neutral words around because that is her preference. We're walking through the grocery store right by the $10 carton eggs, and somebody walks by us, like another customer, goes, "Hello there, ladies," and we both went, "Ew, what was that?" So are there words that you have negative associations about, or words that you have questions about, like gendered words?
What's wrong with hello ladies?
Well, he didn't know our gender identity. He was making an assumption based on the shape of our bodies, and that doesn't feel so good.
But the way that you said it sounded like he was coming on to you.
It felt a little
That's-
creepy. Yeah, I was maybe exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, it was pretty creepy. Yeah.
So what would be a better way for him to have said that?
I think he could have, well, I'm kind of an introvert, so my preference at the grocery store is to not have anybody talk to me. But he could, if he feels the need to say something, I know I'm making an assumption that I'm calling this person he. They could have said, "Hello," or "Good afternoon."
Hey folks.
Hey folks, yeah. "Hello there, friend," is my go-to. Yeah, Joan.
I hate it when these old guys come up and say, "Hello, young lady."
Oh, yeah. There's a little extra layer of condescension to it. Yeah. Right, other words that
more than being out with your female friends and the waiter comes up to the table and he says, "Well, hello girls, what would you like tonight?" And I constantly say, "Wait a minute, we're not girls." And then they don't know what to say.
So what would your preference be, Patricia, when you're out with your friends? How would you prefer?
I would say, "Hi women, how are you?"
Hi, women? Okay.
You're assuming.
Well, that's true.
Oh, well,
We are friends. We are not girls.
Right.
And then I.
all right. Claudia.
In the cases, like women growing up, we're told to be ladylike, not to curse, and I say.
There's often expectations bound up in that language. Yeah. Okay. In general, I would say follow the lead of the trans person that you know. That if they prefer gender neutral, if they prefer, look, we're going to get to that. But are there other gender words that you have a question about? Yeah. Jeff, and then Elizabeth.
To me, transvestite just simply means that one person likes to dress in the clothes of the opposite sex. Is there such a thing as a person who just likes to do that?
Yes.
And does not deny his own sexuality at all?
Yes. And sometimes the word that I hear to describe people who just like to dress as clothing that we expect of another gender is a cross-dresser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That transvestite is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cross-dresser. Yeah, and I think, again, it would depend on what that person uses.
Part of
So-
the reason why transvestite has become a yellow or red term is because of the way it was criminalized.
Oh.
As someone just recently pointed out, that in fact, the riot at the Stonewall Inn, the reason that really came about was because there were laws in New York that a person had to wear at least X number of articles of clothing that were appropriate to their sex or whatever. And anyone that was found to be cross-dressing or a transvestite was arrested, beaten, brutalized, sodomized, and that's how the whole Stonewall Inn riot came about, was because the term transvestite was a criminalized term. So over time, the term became cross-dresser. Yeah. Or someone who cross-dresses. There you go, yeah.
Thanks, Dharma, for that little extra history about the Stonewall Inn riots that were the beginning of Pride. And in general, when someone of a marginalized identity says this word is harmful, let's believe them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We don't need to know, it's great to know the history, but we don't need to know the history when we're told this word harms people, then I'm not going to use it anymore. Just, yeah, okay. So, okay, now I'm going to ask you all to do a little thought experiment with me. This is something that we use in our whole lives. It's just a little way to open up your brain space a little bit. So this afternoon, I'm going down to Starbucks. I know Starbucks is problematic. Just pretend. Just pretend. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, not Starbucks, not yet. First, I'm gonna make coffee in the kitchen. I'm gonna make coffee right here in the kitchen. Do you want your coffee light with cream and sugar or black?
Black.
Cream sugar.
Don't drink coffee.
One.
Okay, so far we got a couple blacks, one no coffee, one cream and sugar. Okay.
Cream.
Nope, I'm sorry. So your choices are cream and sugar or black.
Cream and sugar.
Tea.
Black.
Black, no sugar, no cream.
Okay. Black?
Cream. No sugar.
Steve. Steve or Susie? Yeah. I didn't need to listen to
You know what,
instructions.
everybody is proving your point.
Right.
One or the other, everything
Right.
is in between.
Well, Dan has just ruined the fun. I'm just kidding. So, okay, for this side of the room, I'm going to Starbucks. I have an unlimited card paid for by the UU budget. What do you want?
A latte.
A latte.
A large latte.
Matcha, all right.
Chai.
I only do black.
Oh, still black. Okay, awesome.
Chai.
Chai?
Chocolate chip frappuccino.
Cappuccino, all right.
London fog, 2 cups vanilla, extra hot.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So when you have two options, well, a lot of you chose from those two options because those were the options that you were given. And then for those of you that got the fun Starbucks order, you were like, wow, I can really be anything. I can drink anything. And so when we were taught, there's 2 boxes that you can check, male and female. Most of us chose from those options because we didn't know that we could choose something else. Or if we chose something else anyway, we were told that we were wrong. Or that was really hard to do, right? So that's why you see, particularly the young people among us, they're ordering from the Starbucks menu. And they know that they can do and be and drink anything that they want. So the options for, remember we talked about sex assigned at birth and gender. The choices for sex assigned at birth, what do you think those are? Male, female,
Intersex.
and intersex. Yes, intersex is, depending on how you count those conditions, is somewhere between 1 in 50 births and 1 in 2,000 births. So much more common than real, genuine, not out of a bottle red hair. What are the choices that we know of for gender identity? What are some words that people use to describe their gender? Just shout them out.
Transmasculine, transfeminine.
Transmasculine, transfeminine, other non-binary,
Agender.
agender. Can you say more about that, Nigel?
So agender, I don't identify as that, but I used to, and I looked into it. Basically means that when you say that you don't have a gender, when you say that your internal sense of gender is just that you don't have one, and that so maybe you keep your sex, maybe you go through some surgeries to change it, but it's just the gender just isn't there.
Okay. Thanks, Nigel. Agender. Okay. Other options for gender identity. And that is a sexual orientation. Yeah. They. Oh, they. They is a pronoun that often people who are non-binary would choose to use. Yeah. Okay. Other.
Well, explain binary. To me, that means you could be both.
Non-binary means someone who has a sense of themselves as not a man or a woman, or sometimes some third option, or a fluid understanding. Okay. Other gender identity words.
Gender fluid and gender queer.
Gender fluid and gender queer. You want to say more about either one of those? Or are you good? You can if you choose to.
They still kind of fall under the non-binary umbrella. Gender fluid suggests that one's personal sense of gender changes over time, and how frequently that change is unique to that person. Maybe sometimes they feel more masculine, sometimes they feel more feminine. That's not my identity, but I've noticed people who identify as gender fluid. But that's about gender identity, not who you're attracted to. Now, let me put it this way. Sexual orientation is who you go to bed with. Sexual or gender identity is who you go to bed as. If you're non-binary, that's where things like straight or gay get kind of confusing, and some people just use the word queer as a big umbrella to include sexual orientation and gender identity, sexual presentation or social role. I mean, there's all these different. I know that's actually a word that used to be in the red or yellow category that has been reclaimed by a lot of people. No, I know. Yeah. Things change over time. I often describe myself as a queer person because it covers a lot of complexity. You know, I am pansexual, but I am also transgender. I am binary, not non-binary, but it just kind of describes kind of a catch-all phrase that it fits. Yeah. Because it's like saying, are you married or single, or it's complicated. Queer is a short it's complicated. Okay, queer is kind of a very umbrella term, and gay specifically means you're attracted to people of the same gender identity or sex.
Some other, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of words. The good news is you don't have to learn someone else's words. You just learn yours.
Yes.
respect other people's words, learn yours, okay? So some other gender words that you might hear, besides the ones that we've already mentioned, are, well, man and woman. Those still are out there. Gender queer, third gender, demi-boy or demi-girl, non-binary, gender fluid, gender expansive, gender non-conforming, gender creative, bi-gender. So it could be like, if you think of the way you grew up learning about gender was two boxes. One says M and one says F. Think about instead a whole galaxy of gender.
That's the problem.
Yeah, all right, like that's exciting stuff. There are no wrong ways to be human. That's, yeah. Now just a little word about gender expression that I don't think anybody's mentioned yet. We all express or share our gender in different ways. And so whereas sex assigned at birth, we like, well, there's more or less 2, maybe 3 ways to talk about sex assigned at birth. There's more, maybe a dozen, maybe 50 or 100 ways to talk about gender identity. There are as many gender expressions as there are humans, because we all express our gender in different ways, with our clothing, jewelry, mannerisms, speech patterns, tattoos, piercings, body modifications, hairstyles. Both cisgender people and transgender people seek professional care in ways that affirm our gender expression and identity. So if you get a manicure, you're using gender affirming care, no matter what your gender is. We all have a gender expression. I like to describe mine as sparkly. Sparkly. Like, I like jewelry and makeup and glitter and dresses. Other people would describe their gender expression in different ways. And there's lots of different ways. And they don't have to align with anything. They're just you being you. And that's great. So let's talk a little bit about pronouns. Pronouns are a part of speech. Who remembers Schoolhouse Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Who remembers the pronoun song from Schoolhouse Rock?
No.
It's about Rufus Xavier Sarsaparilla, who found a kangaroo, and the kangaroo followed Rufus Xavier Sarsaparilla. But we don't have to say that. We can say, he found a kangaroo and it followed him home, because pronouns are so great. They are meant to take the place of a noun. So there are lots of them. Lots of them. So sometimes we get caught up in somebody using they as a pronoun when, you know, there are so many, there's like 20 different pronouns in English. Besides he, him, he, she, her, it, they, there's also us, we, everybody, everywhere, nobody, nobody, where, theirs, yours, ours, everybody. Yeah.
I just want to say that, you know, people get caught up in they as, how can they be singular? But then, for example, somebody might look at their class sheet and say, okay, I'm sitting next to Shannon. Well, who are they? Is Shannon a woman or a man? Shannon's a name for both. So they has been used singularly, and yet people don't realize, and they're like, well, why would you use they for a single person? It's like, you already do, and you just don't realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Shakespeare used singular they.
Mm-hmm.
They should be used for every leadership position in the world, because then we would stop categorizing them in one gender or another. It would be they.
Yeah. Who left their coffee?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we use in our congregation, it's our practice to use pronoun ribbons that you can add to your UU name tag, so that you can share the pronouns that you use to refer to yourself. You can share those with the people that you meet here at the UU. Now, I have had people ask, well, why would my pronouns are obvious. Why would a person who's cis, who uses the obvious pronouns, use the pronoun ribbon? Well, it's because that's one way among many ways that we demonstrate to other people that we're comfortable with your gender identity and expression no matter what. We strive to live up to that. So when you as this person is like, hey, I'm going to pick on Steve because I know he doesn't mind. If I say, hey, I'm Steve, my pronouns are he, him, and I put that on your name tag, then you're telling people you can share your pronouns and this is a safe place to do that. So try. When we had CB here last month, a lot of people struggled and misgendered CB by using the wrong pronouns. CB is non-binary and uses they, them pronouns, and people would go, I really liked what she had to say. Yeah, like ouch. And those are the kinds of things that I'm going to interrupt and correct you around. And really, that one I understand because using a pronoun that feels different than you expect means that you literally have to build a new connection in your brain. And that's hard. And so I want to give some grace to learn. But when somebody says, well, see, he or she or they or whatever, that's dismissive and hurtful. Don't say that. So making an honest mistake is understandable. Correct yourself and move on. Or when you're corrected, accept the correction graciously and move on. But using dismissive language around someone, even if it's because you're scared and you're still learning, that's not okay. Okay? Any questions so far? Yes.
Okay, now, I don't know all the different choices you have on those name tags, but the choices that they use, like would you say that you could be called they, or you could be called he, or you could be, I mean, you have to have a choice of one that's polite.
Sure. I think the ones that we have pre-printed say she, her, and he, him.
Oh, okay.
Or I think there's one pre-printed that says they, them. There are also some blank ones. So you could use, like Nigel uses he, him, and it. And so Nigel could make his own pronoun ribbon that says, here's the different choices. Because there are, especially young folks, that use a blend of pronouns, like she and they. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So now we're getting down to the nitty gritty, right? How do we let the kindness and compassion that our hearts feel, how do we express that with our mouth, right? Okay, so here's some general stuff. In general, you should refer to a trans person as the gender identity that they have shared with you most recently, even when you're talking about them in the past. Okay, so that is like, whoa, what? So think through this, because really, your friend who's trans, who says, I'm a woman, has maybe always been a woman. They just didn't share it with you yet. And so when you're talking about Sally Sue, that you know is a trans person, you would always talk about them as Sally Sue, even when you're talking about them long ago. Okay? And you would always use the pronouns that Sally Sue has asked you to use. Okay? So this includes gendered words like son, daughter, uncle, aunt, niece, nephew. You should ask, especially if it's someone in your own family, ask them what they prefer. That doesn't have to be weird. You just like you would ask, how you doing? What's going on with you? You would ask them, now, you've changed your name, beloved child. Do you still think of yourself as a daughter? Or would you like me to say son? Or would you like me to say some other thing? You can just ask.
Is there a term for niece or nephew?
Yes.
Nibbling.
Niece, I have a niece I love dearly, and she is married. They are married to another. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I think of her as my niece, of course, because she's 60 years old. Here I go with she again. So what would be correct?
The
Well-
non-binary term for someone that is a child of your sibling is nibbling. It's
Really?
basically
Nibbling.
the combination of niece, nephew with sibling.
Yep.
Yes.
Nibbling.
Nibbling, yes.
Nom
Yes,
nom
I
nom.
can say my youngest nibbling Charlie, and I mean my sister's 5-year-old son nibbling. Or, 10 years from now, I would ask Charlie, "Are you okay? Is nephew okay?" There isn't, this is just my opinion, there is, in my opinion, not a good gender neutral option for uncle and aunt. I've heard uncle or ankle, and I'm like, ew. So that one's kind of weird. Like, I have not heard a good one for that. Amanda, yeah.
If you have questions like that, just ask your beloved
Yeah.
relative. Maybe relatives are good. Just ask them how you want me to refer to you.
Yeah, or say my fam. There's not, for a non-binary person, there's not a good non-binary word for aunt and uncle, in my mind. Next, I'll get to you. Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
it's called pibbling.
Pibbling?
I think I've heard that. Yeah, like parents.
Oh, okay. Oh, pibbling,
Parent,
okay.
sibling.
I forgot
That's
that.
better than ankle. So, okay, that's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. Second general rule for kindness is you should always use a trans person's chosen name if they've changed their name. Using a trans person's birth name or their previous name, especially in an intentionally hurtful or threatening way, is called dead naming. Please, for the love of all that is holy, do not do that.
Don't ask them what their name was.
Yes, don't ask. If you happen to know a person's previous name, do your best to forget it. Do your best to forget it and practice using their new name. Dead naming has been a precursor to violence. That's why it is such a trigger. I know a person who transitioned a long time ago, and she went to her college reunion having been a woman for 40 years and was called by her dead name. And I try to be a non-violent person, but that's when I wanted to do violence against those people who hurt someone that I care about. So please don't do that. If you know a person's previous name, practice. Like really, just like, okay, this is my friend Bob. Bob is a great friend and I love him. And I practice saying Bob. Bob is great. Bob knows so much about 18th century opera. He's great. And I just practice until it becomes natural to refer to Bob and to use the pronouns that Bob has told me to use. It's worth a little effort, okay? Any questions about being kind to your trans people? Yeah, Joan.
I just wondered.
Again, because we're retraining our brain and building new neurons. And that's, by the way, that's just really good for us, by the way, to keep our brains fresh. So our trans friends are doing us a favor by asking us to grow our brains and keep them fresh and growing. Okay, hard. But I need to model that for you all because it's my job. Because I respect you enough to ask you to do better. So yeah, so I know that is hard for everyone, so I'm trying to model that.
Because we don't know a lot of this.
So that the people who risk around this issue the most so that I'm prioritizing their comfort and safety over mine. Okay, so Susan.
When I did transition, and mistakes happen. Mistakes happened with my parents who knew me since birth, obviously, and it took them a long time before they started using she, her pronouns, and especially, but and even as a trans person, sometimes I space on non-binary pronouns, and I know better, and my brain, there's part of my brain that's still like just he, she, her, and I'm like, no, this person is they. This person uses they, them pronouns, and I have to be mindful of it as well. So you're not alone, and we try to give some grace when it happens. When you realize you've made a mistake, say, sorry, I meant they, I meant she, if that's their pronoun. We just, but don't make a big deal about it. Don't make it all about you. Just say, just correct yourself, I'm sorry, I meant to say that. It takes practice. I know.
So most UU congregations are what we call welcoming congregations, which is supposed to mean we give a particular welcome to people who have felt excluded from religious spaces before, namely LGBTQ folks. But in a 2021-2022 survey of trans UUs, like 28% of them said they actually felt welcomed and accepted in their UU congregation.
Only 28?
Yes, it was abysmally low. So we have work to do, and we're not alone in that. But that means we can't be like, oh, we put that rainbow out. Isn't that enough? It's not, because in fact it kind of makes it worse. We put a rainbow out and then we don't live up to it. It's really disappointing.
I know that one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here looking at the bathroom sign. And I just need to say that that's one of our ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. And it brought a lot of opposition. And I'm really proud of the board that continued with it anyway. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Jen. That means that means a lot to the board. I know, because it's been tough. Okay, last little bit about being kind, and I saw your hands up. We'll get to it. Is pay attention. Like, pay attention to the people that you care about. Like, that's easy, right? So pay attention to the language that they use. Some sort of yellow flag language that we didn't talk about are things like used to be a boy or born in the wrong body. If your trans friends don't use that language, you shouldn't either. And a lot of us here today, including me, talked about people who are not here and outed them as trans. I have a trans grandchild. My neighbor's trans, whatever. You know, like, we all did a little bit of that, right? And this is a safe space, mostly, but be careful about sharing information that's not yours. Okay, just be careful.
Yeah, I have a lot of editing to do in my video before I post it on YouTube. I need to cut out a lot of that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it's really a good idea to treat really everyone's gender journey as private. Like, don't out your trans friends. Don't talk about things that are not your business, okay? It's something for, like, you know, we sometimes say, that's not my story to share. That's good language to think about your trans friends. Emily.
I shared a thing on Facebook that I thought was really very a good metaphor, and I thought, this is a really great way to explain to people who maybe don't understand it, and I got shot down, so I just wanted to just share my mistake with people. And I saw there was a picture of a can of peas, and the label said peas on it, and then you open it up and there's carrots inside. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared that, and I was like, see, this is whatever. I'm trying to explain, this is a good example or whatever. And a couple of trans people I know on Facebook was like, oh, no, don't do that, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
and he said, oh, you do like
Yeah.
think it was like, just because some mistake happened, or like,
Right.
because the label
Right, I
got
can
put on
see
it
that.
by mistake, and it's not a mistake, and I think
Right.
that was
Yeah.
my accident. So just again, when you said they're born in the wrong body, or they're, like that was
Yeah.
kind of, again, just a way to maybe not explain it to
yeah.
people who don't know.
Yeah, cool. I'll see a couple hands and then we'll get around to some real specific, like, don't do these things. That, we'll get to those. Yeah, Amanda and then Joe.
So I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, Karen, it's not your job to just correct people, it's all of our jobs,
Yes.
right? Same thing when we see people being racist or anti-woman, it's all of our jobs to do that. Second, when the people who are struggling with they, one of the ways to think about it is it's not about my comfort, it's about making this person comfortable. The second thing is they may see themselves as two people, so they may in fact be a they. There are people who one day may identify one way, their gender is very fluid, but it's not for us to put a label on, that's the label they're choosing. And then the third thing I want to say is this can really be a safe place for people. I think the bathrooms are a great start, but really looking intentionally at our language, and I think that survey is very telling. It's really sad that less than a quarter of people at UU churches feel comfortable. So I've got to do a better job. We all have to do a better job.
Stopped a couple of new people, women going in there, because I figured some poor guy's gonna be embarrassed if she walks in and he's at the urinal.
Let's let people take care of their own comfort.
Well,
There's not a wrong bathroom to go in.
Well, she was new and didn't know, I mean.
I didn't know.
Not being
I wouldn't
embarrassed,
have, but-
it was-
Well, there are urinal walls going up.
Yeah.
I want you to
We're-
know.
We're working on it.
happening.
We're working
You
on
will
it.
not accidentally walk in and embarrass a man or be embarrassed yourself. The walls are going up.
I mean, actual walls.
Yes,
Yeah,
Well, that's what I wanted to
partition.
know.
yes,
Because
done.
Yeah, Gail.
I wanna bring up another point, because there is some grief on both sides. Meaning, it's not easy to be a grandparent of a little boy that you knew as a little boy, who now says, I identify as a woman. I think we have to have grace on both sides, because there is grief on the side of a parent or a grandparent who's always known and loved a child and thought they were a different gender. It's the same child. We have to give each other grace to walk this together, to not just say that the trans person is struggling. We struggle as parents and loved ones when someone changes their identity. And we have to acknowledge that there's a loss. Well, gee, I thought I had this little girl until she was 15 that's now identifying as a boy. I need to adjust and love and change. There's still grief. There's a loss because we attached. So I think there's two sides that we
Okay.
must always remember, that the people that love us.
Okay, Gail,
Well,
I'm gonna talk about that. So yes, there's grief, but it's not the trans person's job to help you deal with your grief. You find somebody else to help you deal with your grief so that you can be supportive. Because there are two sides, but they don't have an equal burden.
Yeah.
But
So,
we have to acknowledge that it exists, that we can't just
yes.
say, oh, click our
So the
pictures.
grieving person maybe does some self-reflection on, well, what is it that I'm grieving? Am I attached to expectations that I shouldn't have had to start with? Maybe.
Like you do.
So attachments and is part of the problem. And also, like, if we're like, oh, somebody might be embarrassed. Well, what is that? That has to do with the shame that we feel around our bodies. That's something else that we got to deal with. Those are the deeper issues underneath that. So just like when your friend has cancer, you're grieving too, but it's not the person with cancer's job to help you deal with your grief. You find somebody else so that you can support your friend with cancer. Of course,
Yeah.
that's kind of problematic that I just made sort of a false equivocal. there that being trans is like having cancer. Well, of course, I don't mean that. Find somebody else to support your journey so that you can support the person that you love.
I feel like another thing to mention too is, if you're maybe the parent or the grandparent of someone who says, "Hey, I'm trans," and you're like, well, "I don't know what this is," and what am I even getting into saying support or not support? Then it's important to say, "Hey, do you have any articles, anything that you want to share with me to help me better learn?" But you shouldn't say, "Teach me everything," and spend, you shouldn't force them to just constantly be the only teacher. You should say, "Where can I start? Send me some links, get them in the right direction," and then they can say, "Who else can I talk to?" "Oh, here's some links I saw. Let me do more research." And don't only rely on that one person to constantly be educating you, because it can be exhausting. Like, I have autism, I have ADHD, I have so many things, and it's like, it's nice to share my story, but it gets tiring constantly having to say, "This is who I am," and let me explain my entire life, and it's like, I can start on a little bit, but then you need to do your own research, and then say, "Here's what I found." You can say, I'm not sure about this, what do you think about this, here's what I found. But yeah, again, just don't lay it all on the person. And then one last thing, going back to the soup can thing, is like, yeah, if you're talking about trans people and trying to explain it to someone who doesn't really understand, yeah, don't just say "born in the wrong body," but you can say a lot of trans people will use "born in the wrong body," but a lot of people don't. And so that's maybe one way to look at it, and then explain other things. Because, it's one way that's sometimes useful, but if you're gonna say it, you have to preface that some people use it and some people don't.
But that's,
Can you condense that?
sure. The condense is, if you're cis and you have questions about gender identity, find another cis person who can help you learn. Don't depend on your trans friends to educate you. Okay? So that's why I named at the beginning when we first started, why I said, here are the trained OWL facilitators in our community, because there would be good people to start with. Start with Lisa, start with Annie, start with Mandy, to say, "Hey, I heard that you're an OWL person. Can you help me understand what this means?" There are a lot of good resources online. Of course, there's a lot of icky stuff online too, but like, I follow a page on Facebook called "You Might Want to Learn About Trans People." It's really great, because they have a community rule that when somebody asks a question, only trans and non-binary people can respond in the beginning. Like, the first 2 hours of a post are only open to people who have that experience, so that you can learn from the people who are most impacted, and they have a chance to share without the burden of being the only teachers. Okay, Emily, and then Carol.
But just so those people are like choosing to be on that message board, and I think that's the difference between the people you know personally and this message board. Is yes, you want to hear their lived experiences, but don't expect that from people. Like Nigel's saying, it's exhausting.
Yes. Yes.
I was just going to say, tagging on to Gail and about grief, I think when you learn that a loved young one is going through the transition, that part of the grief is it's a very hard life ahead. Sure. That they have the highest suicide rate, the highest bullying rate. Yes. And that's part of the grief. Sure. And then the other is learning the great pain they've lived with when they've been forced to live a life
that doesn't feel authentic. Yeah.
That's not them.
Yeah.
So that's all part of the grief process.
Yeah. Thanks for that wider picture of that. So, Greg, can I get your hand up?
It's real quick. It's a multifaceted, multidimensional issue, and it's really hard to wrap your arms around and be really knowledgeable about it. But at the end of the day, really all it is about inclusion and giving people the respect to live the life that they want to live. I mean, it's just about being respectful. That's all it is. Just respect.
Yeah. Yes. So that is a great segue, thanks.
Oh, good.
So part of being supportive of your trans friends is knowing that some of your questions and things that you're curious about are not welcome. Are not welcome. Questions about surgery and about specific medical transition are intensely personal, and you don't need that information. Just like I would not ask anybody else, so had any good surgery lately? No, like we know not to do that, right? We know that some things are not our business. And so just remember that, some things are not your business. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to be open to hearing someone's story, but don't ask questions, okay?
Like asking about somebody's genitals.
Yeah. It's very personal, so yeah. Be cautious about making assumptions about transition anyway. Not all trans people seek any medical care at all, hormone therapy or any kind of surgery as part of their journey. For one, it's very expensive and it's hard to get. Like the waiting list at Phoenix Children's Hospital for gender affirming care is really long. So not all people want to pass as a certain gender. So that's just not part of what some people want. And so just be cautious about like if someone tells you they're trans, then they are. It doesn't matter if they've done nothing that is part of transition. That doesn't matter. There's no right way or wrong way to be trans or non-binary. I already talked about don't out your peeps. You all are smart. You're smart. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you don't know stuff, because you do. I know you. I know how smart you are. When we know more, we change the way we talk and the way we treat one another when we know more, okay? So I think we already talked about this. When you misgender someone and you catch yourself in the moment, oh, good job. Correct yourself, apologize, move on. Don't make it about you. If someone else misgenders someone, you can correct them, again, quickly, and move on. If you misgender someone and someone corrects you, be gracious, don't offer any excuses, just apologize quickly and move on. Just like if we make any other kind of mistake, right? Let's see, find some research, find some trusted cis folks to ask your questions are on. What is going on now and why are we doing this now? Well, I don't know if y'all are paying attention, but trans folks are in danger in new and terrible, terrible ways. The U.S. federal government has decided that there are only two right ways to be human and only two genders. Well, we know that that is not the case. It's really never been the case. It's never been the case. Trans people were already frequently targeted with violence and subject to discrimination in many, many ways, including housing, right? But yet it's getting worse. State legislatures have been turning out anti-trans bills left, right, and center all across the country. And it's a smokescreen to make people afraid and easily manipulated. It is not about concern for young people. It's not about concern over some alleged fairness in sports or whatever. It's not about that. It's about manipulation. So be smart. Be smarter than they are. The only reason that Arizona has been safe from the worst of anti-trans legislation is because most of those bills have been vetoed. They have come up and they've been defeated. So we're lucky in that way. Stay informed, stay up to date, keep listening to people's stories, keep learning about inclusive language, and keep our UU a safe place for everyone. Any questions? Anybody that hasn't had a question yet or hasn't made a comment that has been holding on to something? I just want to make sure that we offer space. Yeah.
I want to thank you for this because it's opened my mind more than it already has been.
Thank you very much. I'm very gratified by how many people stayed. I really, really appreciate the heck out of you guys week after week, but today especially so. Any other questions or comments from anyone? How are we doing?
I mean, I just have one last thing to say is that, yeah, if you're still learning about it and you make mistakes and stuff, yeah, like Karen was saying, you're smart, you're not dumb, and just think about it as, don't beat yourself over making a mistake. Don't say, oh, I'm stupid. Just say, I'm ignorant on the topic. You know, maybe I made a mistake and let me correct myself, and maybe I don't know these things, so I'm ignorant, not dumb. You don't know it yet, so you can learn it. Dumb would be, you try to learn it and you just, and there's possibly no way that you could. Ignorant is just, I don't know what this is. Let me look and see if I can understand it. And if I'm still confused, I'm going to keep searching to try and understand it.
Any other questions or comments?
Just to build on what I said earlier, if you decide not to respect someone by calling them things that they don't want to be called, you're othering them. And when you other them, you're pushing them out of your circle, and they're not included anymore. So that's, at the end, like, again, at the end of the day, just treat people the way they want to be treated.
Thank you. The opposite of inclusion is othering, yes. Jim?
I thought Phoenix Hospital had stopped giving the medicine. Is that a rumor?
Does anybody know the
I
status
thought
of
that Phoenix Children's Hospital
gender
had
affirming care?
stopped.
I don't remember. I think that they did stop for a while, and then something had happened that where like there was maybe courts going against Trump, or I forget what, but something happened with like, oh wait, now it's technically legal to do this, and we're gonna resume with caution. I think. Don't quote me on that.
I'll do some research this week and try to find out what the status is in Phoenix area. Okay, anybody else? Hey, have a great week, y'all. Thank you so much for staying.
Good job.